All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining our entrepreneurs panel today for the NYU Stern Executive MBA program. We're very happy to be able to have three fantastic students slash alumni here joining us today to talk a little bit more about their journey through entrepreneurship in the program and so forth. To start off, my name is William Liao, and I'm part of the admissions team for the NYU Stern Executive MBA program. And tonight I'll have a bunch of questions for our students and alumni here today. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them through the Q&A section and we'll go through them towards the end of our session here tonight. Okay, and with that said, we'd love to have all of you introduce yourselves. So Caitlin, why don't we start with you and then we'll kind of go around the list that I have here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Caitlin West. I was part of J24. So graduating this summer, I guess officially you can say. And the company that I started is called Alivio Technologies, Inc. And we help arthritis patients manage day-to-day inflammation.
Great. And Chris?
Yeah, my name is Christopher Brown, and I was in the 2020. I was in the J20 class, which actually wraps up in 19. But yeah, I was in the J20 class at NYU Stern up in New York, and the company I started about almost 30 years ago is called Teed and Brown, and we're a home lawn care service, a home residential lawn treatment service company.
And last but not least, Vivek.
Hey everybody, Vivek Pinto. I'm in the DC 24 cohort, so we're just finishing up. We have 2 classes left and graduating in August. I'm the director for a division at FDA in the Center for Devices and Radiological Health for neuromodulation and physical medicine devices. But as part of this entrepreneurship panel, really speaking on my personal experience with trying to look into a venture in making better hockey equipment.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for the introduction, and I'd love to actually get to understand a little bit about who our attendees are here for today. So I have a poll for everyone to answer just to see, whether you're in entrepreneurship, whether you have your own business, whether you're thinking about your own business, or maybe you're exiting out of entrepreneurship. So feel free to go ahead and answer some questions just, for all four of us to know who's in attendance here today.
This is like watching a horse race. I'm watching the whole numbers come in and like, come on, yes, come on, yes.
Unsure. It's kind of like popping up a little bit.
A little bit there, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we can give it a couple more seconds for people to answer some of these questions. But from what I'm seeing here right now, it seems that most people don't have their own business, but a good, I'd say 40% or so.
Pretty good number do. Yeah.
Yeah. And a couple of you are thinking about starting your own businesses. And of course, I'll share these poll results afterwards. Okay, I think we can go ahead and close the poll. And here, everyone can sort of see the results here. And this is who we are joining us today. So thank you so much for answering those polls. Amazing. Well, with that said, I would love to start with you, Vivek, on our sort of round robin of questions here today. So you are currently a medical device regulator with the FDA, and you're also an active hockey player and coach. So what motivated you to get your MBA at Stern and to think more seriously about your impact on hockey equipment?
Yeah, so it was pretty interesting. I'll try to keep it a little bit concise, but being a player for decades, since high school, I always modified my pads. And I was at NYU before. I used to be a design engineer, and I came to NYU for learning biomechanics. And throughout the years, I kind of kept up with seeing changes to pad designs, things that I thought of long ago, and glad to see that they were being made. But eventually I was at my 10-year mark in doing regulatory affairs work. And I really wanted to understand how businesses operated, how markets function. And also on the side, of course, I was still playing, and I even helped a friend out who was getting some injuries with some modifications to his pads right before the program. But I wasn't necessarily thinking about, entrepreneurship right when I started. And so I worked with the careers folks. They actually put me in touch with Caitlin pretty early on. Through my marketing class, I got a better understanding of how to recognize benefits that people were seeing with the products and services they were having. And so that was pretty interesting, just a curiosity. But as the year went on, I started coaching my sons and saw the pain of dressing them for the 6 a.m. hockey practice and forgetting an elbow pad here or there, and then come home, and then all of a sudden my little one just puts on his Iron Man costume, zips it right up himself, and then starts running around. And I was like, wow, that functionally would be really great if we had something like that. And so I think it was Caitlin, you actually introduced me to like the Leslie E Labs. And so I started looking into, the resources they provided, and they have a lot of great online content for lean entrepreneurship. And so I learned about really the power of doing the customer insight interviews and ways to do that to control for bias and other things. And so I was able to enroll in a boot camp, and I started off with, really trying to understand parents of hockey players, of some of the problems I was having, like there were others as well. And really after that experience, I realized that, some of the things that I thought people were experiencing wasn't really the true things that was really on their mind. Even though there were problems, they weren't the main problems where they would necessarily be early adopters of some changes to equipment. And so then I pivoted, which is one of the things they really teach you when you learn about these insights, and did a completely different project for when I applied for the sprint. And that was pretty insightful. And I certainly could go into that a bit more as we go on.
Great. Thank you so much, Vivek. And there's a question actually that came in for you. Is it ice hockey or field hockey?
Ice hockey, yeah. I played roller in ice hockey, but mostly ice hockey.
Amazing. Great. The next question is for you, Chris. So you co-founded your lawn care business, Teed & Brown, with your business partner, Peter, 28 years ago in 1995. Wow. So if I'm correct, it was originally called the Grassroots, and it all started with Peter's pickup truck in a family garage. So what was that journey like for you, and what motivated you to pursue your MBA at NYU Stern?
Well, let's see. First part of the question, what was the journey like for me? How long do we have tonight? It's been a while, and I could talk for hours on this, and I don't want to subject people to that. It's been fascinating, though. It's been a really amazing journey. And I think I've really been blessed with the opportunity to understand and experience building and growing and leading a business at every different stage, from being just me and a partner to now to the size we are. When I say every stage, there's still some stages left to go, so I'm not quite there yet. But we have about 125 employees right now, and operate out of 5 locations. And there have been so many different steps along the way. So I like to tell people that I've had the same job since about a year out of college, undergrad. But in reality, I've had about 30 different jobs, because it just changes constantly as things grow. So that's just been a fascinating journey. And what prompted me to want to go back and get my MBA was a lot of things. I love learning. I love learning new things, and I'm always sort of taking online classes and that sort of thing. But I joke about it, but it's pretty accurate in that we got to a certain size where I'd say we had about 30 employees, give or take. And we understood that we had something a little bit special on our hands. Our next biggest competitors, the mom and pop operations in our area, were maybe 10 to 15 employees. So we were already doing better. But I could also look around and see a lot of big companies out there that were doing far better than us, that were growing into multiple states, large super regional players. And I looked at them, just had absolutely no clue how they did what they did and how they got from where we were to that point. And that frustrated me. And a lot of the other day-to-day problems we were having in our business frustrated me. And I finally looked at my partner and I said, we've been running this business for almost about 20 years now. One of us should really go learn how to run a business. because we both knew how to take care of grass. We both knew how to make the lawns look nice and how to deal with customers. But there's just so much more to running a successful enterprise, no matter what business you're in. And that was the stuff we needed to learn. And so I raised my hand and volunteered. And he said, "Great, if you're willing to go for it, let's you do it and come back and tell me everything you learned." And so that's pretty much what we did.
That's amazing. I mean, you had the technical knowledge and just needed to pair that up with the business acumen to sort of, bridge those two together. So that's great. Chris, thank you so much for sharing that. Well, Caitlin, you're an interesting situation. So you were a finance leader at, is it Curate Retail Group? Is that how you say it? Great.
Correct. Yeah.
And when you first started the MBA program, that was your role. But midway into the program, you decided to pursue your current business for Livio full time. So could you tell us more about that and how the EMBA program catapulted you into your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. So when I went in to Stern for my EMBA, I was like, I want to go into consulting, continue building my career in finance transformation. So I used to help corporate retailers manage bankruptcy, executive turnover, and building out financial and accounting departments. So my background's very much accounting and finance. I also have an autoimmune disease that kickstarted my company. So I have a disease called psoriatic arthritis. So if you see me like fidgeting, it's because I'm chronically uncomfortable. So I'm excited to be here. I'm not nervous, don't worry. So like I'm just uncomfortable. So throughout Stern, I think one of the amazing things to just highlight is the advocacy and support you get from your peers to try something new. And previously, before joining Stern, I didn't have the courage to kind of go into the med tech space because I'm like, hey, I'm a patient. How am I going to develop this? I know how to model it out. I come from a family of engineers and doctors. I know what to do, but I am not like the traditional technical expert that you would see building a med tech company. And what I found through likely going through my first 6 months is the support from my cohort to just go out there and try, and the resources available. Vivek mentioned the Leslie Lab, but just the ability to connect with other thought leaders spearheaded me into building my company. It also did not hurt that I planned a layoff that laid me off. So I was also kind of like jolted into this direction, and I decided to make the most out of it. So I was like, okay, I have a year and a half left of my executive MBA. When am I going to have all of these resources available to me? Let's just see what we can do from taking it from research and like customer discovery to a concept. And NYU is pretty unique in that way, I think.
Amazing, Caitlin. Thank you so much for sharing something so personal with all of us, and how that sort of everything's just sort of aligned and allowed that opportunity to happen for you. So I think it's wonderful to hear that. Great. So Vivek, let's go back to you. So you've used the NYU Leslie eLabs, and I'm hearing that sort of being thrown out. And so a couple of times here, which provides a group and one-on-one coaching sessions that teach you about entrepreneurship methods and also give you insights into their Installator series. So since you're in the DMV area, how easy was it to access these resources, and what was your takeaway from using these resources?
Yeah, I don't know if it was timely, but there were a lot of different benefits of COVID, and one was I think it just really opened up this, like we're doing now, these virtual meetings, and so I was able to get like a lot of coaching one-on-one, of course, virtually, because most of the resources are up in New York. But because I participated in the boot camp and because we had our team down here that we were building, they allowed us to do the sprint virtually too, and that was over a 2-week period. Caitlin was also in our group for that one, or our cohort for that sprint, and so we were tasked with doing 50 customer discoveries and iterating and presenting, on the fly, and also doing these different classes. But I have like 3 kids at home, and my wife is there, and so I was on paternity leave, but I couldn't just come up to New York. So it really was vital that I was able to participate virtually. But also the other side of it was, the customers that, I was trying to get insight from were here. In the sense I'm 5 minutes away from one of my main hockey rinks. And, if we were in New York in the city, it just would have been tougher to try to, get in contact with a lot of different customers really quickly, or potential customers, to have all those insight interviews. So it was really nice that they were very accommodating for that. And like Caitlin said too, there's also other resources and other people like the NYU Futures Labs, like the Berkeley Center that were helping along the way, with just different kind of perspectives, but also just connecting with different people.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it was, and in a way, is an opportune time to sort of open that resource up to everybody, do sort of online and whatnot. So I'm very happy that you're able to sort of use that opportunity, you and Caitlin as well. So that's great. Chris, I read your LinkedIn blog post, right? You titled it "A Lawn Guy Gets an MBA." And you gave credit to a number of professors and courses. So how did their mentorship and the frameworks that you've learned help shape or change your business?
Let's see. And you mentioned that when you sent me the email, and I had almost forgotten about that blog post. So it was kind of fun to go back and reread it and think about what was I thinking about that time. I wrote it just a few weeks after my last class, and just wanted to take a few minutes to reflect on the experience. And it was really neat. I think the biggest lessons I pulled away, there's so many, really. The biggest ones would be just understanding that a successful business is this complex interplay of a variety of different things. It's a combination of art and science. It's a combination of there you've got your people who are one of your biggest assets. You've also got the systems that you put into place. You've also got the style and the image that you put out to the world. You've got your financial acumen and your accounting processes in the background. You have so many different aspects to the business that you have to somehow or another get them all pointed in the right direction and make it all work to serve some sort of greater plan. And that's the big picture challenge that I don't think I ever really grasped before my time at Stern. It was really just a lot of, hey, we're going to sign up more customers, we're going to hire more employees, and we're just going to grow that way. And that maxes out at a certain point if you don't have all those pieces in place. So, one of the models that really spoke to that and helped me visualize it and understand it was the McKinsey 7S model, which I'm not sure if other panelists here, if anybody else is familiar with that, but it's a really nice way of looking at it. I think it's a very simple way, but it just highlights and helps me to kind of go back. And I've actually got an image of it up on my wall in my office to just look at every now and then. So whenever we're running into challenges in the company, I look at it and say, okay, where does that challenge lie? Is it which one of these 7S's? Is it style? Is it skill set? Is it systems? Is it strategy? And usually that helps me to understand where the weak link is and what we need to work on and shore up at that point. I would say that's, and I could go on and on again for hours on all the specific lessons I learned. And, going right back to COVID, I'll even divert just a little bit here. But, as soon as we finished up the program, COVID hit. It was like we were the last class in New York to finish up completely on site. The next class right behind us had to do their last semester, or at least a good chunk of their last semester, via Zoom. And so we experienced that. And then all of a sudden, here we are thrown into this world. And I had just taken a class in crisis management, which was just a wonderful class. It was one of the most insightful classes, and I've used the tools many, many times. But all of a sudden, here we are, and we don't know if the government's going to shut us down. We don't know if the customers are going to have any money left to spend. All our employees are looking for some sort of security, and there's only so much money to go around at this point. And there was a lot of big decisions to make, and the lessons I learned in that class really significantly helped me to navigate that. And luckily, things worked out well where we didn't get shut down, and we figured out a way to make things work, and we forged ahead and got through it all. But honestly, just without having had that experience, I don't know how I would have handled being thrown into that circumstance. I don't think even 1/10 as well as I did. because it really spoke to that exact circumstance. You're having, this potentially awful business changing situation thrown at you. How do you handle it? And yeah, no, that was fantastic. But like I said, going back to it, I think the biggest lesson I took was that interplay of all the different disparate pieces of a company that really have very little to do with each other, have different mindsets, different skill sets, and you got to get them all working together. And that's just a constant but very motivational and fun challenge for me.
Right. So, Christopher, I feel like I made you walk down memory lane going through the blog post again. So hopefully that was a good experience. And
Oh yeah,
thank you so much
thankfully, yes.
and thank you so much for sharing that, that story about COVID and, how that class really impacted and, helped in sort of manage during that challenging time for all of us. Great. And Kaylin, turning the attention to you again. So you also participated in the 2023-2024 NYU Entrepreneurs Challenge this year, and you made it to the final round. So congratulations on that. Could you tell us more about that experience?
Sure. And I will say, I probably did every accelerator at NYU. So from like the sprint to the boot camp, to the Stern Venture Fellows, to the Entrepreneurship Challenge, to Catalyst, to female founders. So when I say you can like start your company at NYU, you can start your company at NYU. But the challenge was, so I applied to Berkeley's Entrepreneurship Challenge twice. I applied my first year when I was like, okay, I'm going to really try to make this a viable company. Because what's so interesting and unique about the Entrepreneurship Challenge is that not only it's not necessarily like a pitch competition, it's coaching and mentoring and business modeling all in one. So you get like 6 to 9 months of continuous just evolution of your business or even like your early venture idea. So the first time that I applied, I was too early. So if any of you have applied and didn't get in, I would encourage you to take advantage of the other items at the Leslie Center or even Berkeley to Stern Venture Fellows, because they will prepare you for the Entrepreneurship Challenge in this next wave. It was a fast-paced, in your face in a good way experience. Naturally, as an entrepreneur, you have to have a thick skin. And the nice thing about the challenge is the judges from semifinals to finals have very honest feedback, but it's based because they're industry experts. So in the healthcare track, it was leaders from Bain and McKinsey. It was people who have built medical devices. It's been individuals who have been on the FDA side or on the insurance side. And I can't speak more highly about the growth that you get not only as a founder, but a company going through something like the Berkeley Entrepreneurship Challenge. And we were final 3. I think there was about 7 or 8 that started. And I was really pleased that we made it to final 3 because we were with these brilliant minds of PhD researchers, engineers that are a whole different way of approaching problems than what we are. So I know it's a little bit of like a hodgepodge answer, but I couldn't speak more highly of the opportunity that was.
Great. Kaylin, thank you so much for sharing so much more about the resources that you've used and your experience with that sort of Entrepreneurs Challenge. We had a question here from the audience asking to learn more about these accelerated programs. Is there a link that you can provide to this person that you can share? Yeah.
So there's actually a lot of links. So let me just make sure I am sending you the right ones. I'm actually going to make sure I send this the right way. So you can do, there's NYU Entrepreneurship, which is like the general entrepreneurship page. But if you Google like NYU Entrepreneurship Challenge or NYU like Leslie Lab, all of these resources will pop up. I'm happy, William, to give you the actual links after the session too.
Yeah, that'd be great. And yeah, if you just type in accelerator programs, NYU, all of that will pop up like Caitlin said. So feel free to take a look at that. Great. Well, thank you all for answering these questions. Well, the other questions that I have for all of you would, whoever wants to answer, feel free to do so. Can you share a class that you took or an example of a concept or strategy that you learned in the EMBA program that directly contributed to the success of your business or entrepreneurial endeavor? Chris?
Oh, go ahead. Sure. So I did a class called Managing Growing Companies, which was, could you think of a more appropriate class for my situation, right? That's exactly what I was there for, is to understand how to manage growing companies. It was Professor Glenn Oken, a very interesting gentleman, but everybody who goes there says you have to take one of his classes. He's really a unique professor, but boy, oh boy, was that helpful. And the number of times I sat in that class and just had these moments of, oh, now I understand what I'm going through. I'm understanding why that thing I tried a couple of years ago just failed miserably, or why this is probably the way for me to go. But I think one of the big ones is we use this when we recently, about 2 years ago, we purchased 2 local irrigation businesses. So my company, we do lawn care, fertilizing, and treatments to get the lawns looking really nice. We had not been doing any irrigation work, but we found that there was a big lack in the area of quality irrigation service providers. And it goes hand in hand with what we do. We're trying to provide a nice lawn and a nice garden experience for people. And if they can't get water on it, there's only so much. So what in one of the case studies that we did, we looked at companies that had acquired other smaller providers and some of the mistakes they went through and some of the decision making, and why it didn't work out, or why one of them did work out. And one of the ones that I found really fascinating, it just didn't occur to me, but the person that the case study was about had this philosophy that he was going to buy really strong companies that he couldn't find any fault with. He was going to buy these small businesses and roll them up that already had everything running smooth and everything was going great. Now, that sounds logical, but the problem was you're going to pay a lot for those companies and there's not a whole lot of room for improvement. What can you bring to, how can you maximize the potential of that if they've already got everything more or less figured out? And so what you want to do is look for companies that are doing well, maybe in spite of certain weaknesses, and they've got some areas that they're not doing well that you actually can bring that skill set to and improve them immediately. And so you're going to pay a reasonable amount for them, but you're also going to be able to experience immediate growth and improvement, and thereby maximize your investment on the company. And so I really had that mindset going into the companies and was able to quickly identify, okay, these guys are doing X, Y, and Z, and we've actually been there. We were a much smaller business at one point in time, and we know exactly the position there, and we know exactly how to take them from where they are and move them to where we are, and use that so that we could, buy a company this size, but very quickly, grow it to that size. So I think that was just one of the concepts. Again, I could go on forever, but that was one that really sticks out as being particularly insightful and helpful in my entrepreneurship journey since I've been there.
Great, thank you, Chris. Caitlin?
So there was a class called Leadership and Emerging Trends in Healthcare. Dr. Byron Scott led it, and it was a newer class. So I think I was one of the first ones to actually go through it. Talk about the power of network. Dr. Scott, each class, there was a speaker from industry. So whether it was regulations, whether it was healthcare coaching, whether it was insurance, whether it was one of the founders of Stanford Biodesign, the breadth of individuals coming in. And then he also really promoted also continued learning. So he suggested books to read and provided books for us and in a raffle. It was one of those classes that every time you went, you didn't really know what to expect because the syllabus didn't do it justice, but then you left having more questions, intrigued, and oftentimes the speakers were open to collaborating or talking with you afterwards. And it was one of the most beneficial classes for myself, because not only Did it give me a lens into an area which I was learning as a business or a founder, but also leadership in itself is a continuous involvement. And I think he did a really nice job of talking about different communication styles, how you can actually have productive conversations with healthcare providers and professionals and scientific research. I couldn't speak more highly of the instructor or the class itself.
Great.
But
Thank you so much, Caitlin.
yeah, I will say Glenn is a powerhouse. So
Yeah, he is.
Glenn also, I think, and then I'll stop, but I think that the amazing thing about the staff at NYU is that everyone, if you tell them you're building something, especially Glenn, he's going to be like, what have you done? Like, have you looked at different companies? Have you looked at 10Ks? Like, what can you copy and like analysis? Like, Glenn is one where anything startup, he's like, I agree. Like, you have to take one of his classes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of echo that too, is just the power of the faculty. And that was actually, in the end, I look back and like, what are the different reasons why I chose NYU? And the main one was just the faculty profiles. And it really it was a difficult thing to answer a question in another panel where it's like, okay, what's your favorite class? And so I like that this is more of a spin on what class helped you the most with the entrepreneurship. And I would say, for me, probably marketing was the one that helped the most. Although during the class, I didn't really understand how the professional was able to acquire the data, and then realized through this methods of lean entrepreneurship that, oh, okay, it really was through this customer insights over time. Um, but the big takeaway, especially coming to the end of the program, is just those relationships you build with the professors. And like Caitlin said, you talk to them, how your venture is evolving, and they want to help you, and most of them make themselves accessible. And whether it's the class weekends or afterwards, even with Glenn, like someone actually yesterday was telling me, I did take his class. I don't think I had time to talk about the venture then. It was one of those shortened weeks, but they're like, definitely, reach out to him when you want to chat, because he will help you through that. And so I really look at NYU and the resources as like a lifelong access. And Caitlin, I want to actually chat with you later about that class you took, because one of the other things that's really an advantage of NYU is that you can audit these classes afterwards. And
Yeah.
when you have time, or you have to choose electives and you're not sure which one, it's no pressure. You can take it another year when you have time down the road.
Mhm. For sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually great that you mentioned about the lifelong benefits. And when people ask us a question during the interview process, what do you think are your students' biggest regrets? And it used to be that, they're only here for 2 years in a program, and they can only take a certain amount of classes. But with these lifelong benefits, I feel and everybody can come back to, really get the additional classes that they've always wanted to take. And you get one elective course per semester per year, and along with that, 2 additional free short courses every year, and that's for the rest of your life. So I think it's becoming an opportunity for all of our students and also alumni. So Chris, have you taken advantage of that yet?
I have not, and unfortunately, that's largely because of COVID. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I did take advantage of that online. I did a corporate finance class online. I almost forgot about that, but it was it was like a 1 week class that I was able to get at no charge, and that was wonderful. And it was a lot of stuff that I had learned in the program, but I needed to refresh myself on, and so it's a great opportunity to kind of sit through and refresh and learn a few new things. So that was great. I haven't done it again since, but it's one of those things where just about every semester I do sit down and look through what the offerings are, and I just haven't pulled the trigger on them. But I know I will soon. I'm looking forward to getting to auditing a class in person. I just want to get back to New York and have an excuse to get on the train every day. I live in Connecticut for anybody watching, and so I do have to hop on a train. But I love New York City, and so getting down in there and sitting in a class in Stern, I'm really excited about the prospect of doing that again. So
Yeah, that's great. We'll always welcome you back at Stern. Um, Amazing. So with that said, there is a question that came in. We can about concentration. So we call them specializations in a program. So have any of you specialized in a program, and was that because of your entrepreneurial journey, and how did you choose your specialization?
Actually, so it was, I will say, I chose classes that were interesting to me and I felt like could teach me something new and different versus focusing on a specialization track. Now, the other side of that is I'm one class short on like multiple specializations, so I don't know if that really served me very well. But I do have like a strategy and I do have like, some of the other ones, but I'm a little bit more of the camp of this, the specialization isn't on your diploma, right? You get to highlight it on your LinkedIn profile. Take the classes that you find will challenge you and push you in different directions. And if that means you fall short of a specialization, unless you're in a company where like you're finance or accounting and you really just want to say you specialize in finance, like more power to you, because NYU is amazing at finance. But if you're starting a company and you need to learn about marketing or if you need to learn about financial modeling, take the classes that make sense. I'm not sure if Chris or Vivek have another perspective.
I had the same perspective, actually. I fell short for the finance and corporate finance one by one class each, and yeah, you can't combine them. But I didn't consider it much compared to just what were the specialization or the elective offerings, and just chose them on that and said, okay, at the end of the day, we'll see if there is a specialization track, which you inevitably end up with one.
Mhm.
And so mine was, I think, management and a general management degree. So yeah, I definitely am pro, picking the classes that are right for you.
I would tend to agree. I think I ended up actually with two specializations, but it was just by chance that I happened to enjoy those topics. And it was one was marketing and one was management and change leadership, or leadership and change management. I'm sorry. And both of those were just areas I was very fascinated and interested in. So I ended up with the specializations, but I would I would say they're nice. It's kind of a nice little, you can pat yourself on the back. Hey, I got the specialization. But the reality is you're better off just picking out the classes that are most interesting to you. And if it leads to one, great. If it doesn't, it's not going to cause any problems.
Great. And I think that just speaks to the flexibility of the program that you have. In year two, you can go in with a specialization you want and just take classes that meet that specialization, or like the majority of all what you said is, just take that class that interests you and at the end see if it amounts to any sort of specializations at the end. And of course, with those lifelong learning benefits, you can continue to take classes again that you may not have had the chance to take, but you can still always audit and after you graduate from the program. Great. So the other question is about work-life balance. So it's, as entrepreneurs, how do you balance the demands of running a business with the academic rigor of an EMBA program?
Lots of caffeine.
Mhm.
I think the one smart thing I did is waited until my kids were older. And that was good and bad because by that time my brain had developed a little bit of rust from my undergraduate days. But yeah, there's no way to sugarcoat it. You're going to be putting a lot of hours in, and both at work and for the program. All I can say is just organize yourself well, manage your time, and set aside some time every day to put towards some of your classwork, and then a few hours on the weekend, and you should be able to do it without completely burning the candle at both ends. But it's going to be a time commitment, and it's going to be, but it'll be like anything. It's anything worth doing or anything worth having is worth doing, and the experience you get and the lessons that you learn and the skills you're going to develop are worth the effort you're going to put in.
Yeah, it also, I
Thank you
get
for sharing.
the time management part. I kind of came at it at a different point. So when I was telling Chris before the call that when I put my deposit in for NYU, the next morning my wife told me she was pregnant with our third child. And so then I actually did the boot camp from the hospital because she was born 2 weeks early. And she actually got a certificate too from the Leslie E Labs on her life. So that was interesting. But yeah, I think that it is worth, packing in things within the program timeline that you have. I mean, folks, when you're doing it or you're about to do the program, you do come in with a lot of energy because you're going for an MBA. And so, um, try to get the most experience you have. But at the same time, I packed a lot into that first year. And the second year, I had a lot more things going on at work and needed to kind of take a step back. And, my third child was growing up and needed to pay, attention to the other kids a lot with, activities they were going on. And so I did take a pause with the venture part, but it wasn't that, I was forgetting about it. I just didn't go in as intense as I did the first year. And I have the intention to pick that back up in July when I finish classes. So just know what your different capabilities are and know that, you need to pay attention to a lot of things in life. So, um,
Yeah.
just try.
To just add to that, what I did, because there will be days or weeks where you all you do is school and work or like grinding on either front. I made sure my close family and friends understood what I was like getting into. So having that support also is very critical, because as a founder, and when you're going through the grind and like growing a company, the different stages, the evolutions, the dips and the like all of it, there's sometimes it can be isolating in itself. And I think the one nice thing about going through your MBA and also building a company or working is that if you are going through those dips and valleys, you have a network of people who are aware of what you're going through. And if you use your cohort or your professors in the right way or your base in the right way, they will give you tips and tricks. Obviously, my caffeine is failing. To help you through that time. So the more that you actually kind of like lean into the vulnerability of saying like, crap, like it's a really tough week. Like this class, I'm just not getting because I'm doing X with my company. Like utilize also the network that you have around you. You'd be surprised too. How that helps you balance or find somewhat of a balance. But I laughed at balance because there really is no balance. I think it's like all or nothing as sometimes as you're going through this.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your insights to everyone in terms of how to manage your life, school, and whatever else is going on. So one other question is, reflecting on your MBA experience, what advice would you give to fellow entrepreneurs considering pursuing an MBA to further their professional development and entrepreneurial aspirations?
Just do it.
I just do it. There was more than a few people in my program who made comments along the lines. I don't know if they were just being a little bit flippant or not, but they would essentially allude to the fact that they were doing it because they needed that piece of paper to move up in their career. And it wasn't so much about the learning opportunity. They kind of felt like, and again, I don't know if it was just, being lighthearted and they didn't really mean it or not. I didn't pry too much. I was there 100% for the learning experience. For me, just running my own business, I don't have any plans of ever putting together a resume ever again. I'm not going to be applying for jobs. I'm not looking to move up some corporate ladder. Don't get me wrong, the MBA diploma is plastered very prominently on my office wall, and I'm very proud of it. But I didn't need it for anything, but I needed the knowledge. And I think going into this, really think about, are you going into it for the knowledge, or are you going into it just to get that piece of paper? And if the latter, then maybe think again, because there's so much to be gained that you're going to learn way above and beyond just having that neat piece of paper. So just that's, yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit, but I think you get the point that it's really should be about the knowledge and what you're going to learn and the skills you're going to develop.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, thinking back on like the hardest times with school, if I was doing it personally speaking, just for the piece of paper, I don't know if I would have been able to stick with it because it's hard, right? Like the faculty are these esteemed faculty that we've talked about, but they also have really high expectations because it's the executive MBA program. And they say that they're excited to teach you and they're excited to push you. So if you're just doing it for the paper, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, no, I was actually having that conversation with my mom this morning that, okay, I'm going to graduate and they get, this degree, but that's not, really what, it's like a carrot. That it was
Mhm.
all of this knowledge that they gained, all these relationships that was such a great outcome. But also just, Will, I'm kind of going back to your question about, kind of tying it to the entrepreneurship. And also seeing one of the questions in the chat. I did reflect back on like a TED talk I saw. It probably was during the marketing class or strategy, but it kind of, the speaker spoke to that, people don't buy what you do, but they buy like why you do it. And so like ask yourself, if you are going to go down these like, venture routes, like, why are you pursuing this endeavor? And personally for mine is, I'm a coach, I'm a player, I want to allow people to play to their natural abilities, given what their range of motion is. I don't want myself to be restricted. And that's going to prevent me from scoring a goal or skating as fast as I can. So, these things this venture, it's more than, okay, just making a company. It's to help people. So, if you find that passion area or the area that you feel that, you can provide value to, then yeah, like Caitlin said, like, just do it. Like our marketing professor, he told me, just start it. Like, see what happens in 2 years. Start it now, acquire data, do some work with it, and see where you're at in 2 years.
Great. Well, thank you all three of you for answering all the questions that I have for you today, and also some of the questions that came in through the Q&A today. Again, thank you so much for your insights, and really, there's no better time than now. And I personally think that time is, so valuable to all of us. And if you want to start something, you should start it now. So yeah, amazing. Thank you all so much. And we'll be happy to answer some questions that came into us prior to the session here today, and also the ones that are submitted through our Q&A. Great. So